My beloved child, pause right here, before you scroll, before you doubt, before your mind rushes ahead, because something rare is aligning in this exact moment. Not noise, not hype, a signal. Imagine being invited into a quiet room where only clarity exists, where the future leans forward and says your name. This is not about fame or fortune on the surface. This is about timing. And timing is everything. You felt it, haven't you? That strange sense that the world is accelerating, yet your inner voice is asking deeper questions. Why now? Why you? Why does it feel like the old path no longer fits, yet the new one hasn't fully appeared? Stay with that feeling. It's not confusion. It's preparation. Picture this, a mind obsessed with first principles, with stripping reality down to its core and rebuilding it stronger. When someone like that wants 2 minutes, it's never small talk. It's compression. Years of insight folded into seconds. And here's the twist, you don't need a private meeting for the message to reach you. The idea travels. The awareness arrives where it's needed. What if this moment reframes how you see effort? What if the pressure you've been under isn't resistance, but propulsion? Most people misread the signs. They think struggle means stop. Visionaries know it often means recalibrate. Listen closely. The future doesn't reward those who wait for permission. It responds to those who understand leverage, of time, of focus, of thought. You've been trained, quietly, by every delay and every detour. Nothing was wasted. Even the pauses had purpose. There's a reason your curiosity pulled you here. Curiosity is the fingerprint of growth. When your mind leans forward, reality eventually follows. But only if you're willing to see differently. Not bigger, clearer. Consider this question and let it sit. If the rules were rewritten tomorrow, would your current skills still matter? If not, what are you being nudged to learn, to build, to become? This isn't pressure. It's an invitation. Stay a little longer. The pieces are moving into place. And this is only the opening frame of a much larger picture. My beloved child, hold that thought, because here's where the signal sharpens. There's a misconception that progress is loud. In truth, the most important shifts happen quietly, almost invisibly, until suddenly they're everywhere. The people who benefit aren't the fastest runners, they're the ones who saw the direction early. You are standing at one of those thresholds. 2 minutes of truth can save years of wandering. The core idea is simple but demanding. Stop chasing outcomes and start engineering systems. Outcomes fluctuate. Systems compound. This is how exponential change is born, by focusing on what repeats, not what shines once. Think about how often you've waited for motivation. Now flip the model. Action first. Clarity follows. This isn't about hustle, it's about alignment. When your actions line up with a long-term vision, energy appears where exhaustion once lived. There's something else most people miss. The future isn't evenly distributed. It arrives in pockets, in early adopters, in those willing to look slightly strange before they look obvious. You don't need approval to start thinking ahead. You need courage to trust your analysis. Ask yourself, what problem keeps resurfacing in your mind? That's not random. Recurring thoughts are clues pointing to where your contribution might matter most. Solve meaningful problems, and relevance finds you. If this perspective resonates, you might quietly share it with someone who's been feeling the same pull, or leave a thought below so others know they're not alone, or stay connected so you don't miss what unfolds next. Small actions, taken naturally, create larger networks of insight. Before you go anywhere, absorb this. The future favors builders. Not just of products, but of understanding. The ones who simplify complexity. The ones who stay curious longer than others stay comfortable. Wait till the final moment of this thought. You're not behind. You're early, and learning how to see. My beloved child, one more shift. Slow down for this, because it changes how you measure yourself. Society teaches linear progress. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Reality moves in curves. Long periods of seeming stillness, followed by sudden leaps. If you're in the quiet stretch, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means energy is gathering. Here's the mindset that separates spectators from participants. Assume the future is malleable, not fixed, not decided, shaped by those who understand leverage and act with intention. When you truly believe that, hesitation loses its grip. Notice how your attention works. Whatever you feed it grows. Feed it fear, and fear multiplies. Feed it understanding, and options appear. This is why awareness is power. It expands the menu of possible moves. You don't need to have everything figured out. You need direction, not certainty. The willingness to test, adjust, and iterate is more valuable than flawless planning. Progress is a conversation with reality, not a lecture. There's a line many never cross. The moment they stop asking, "Will this work?" and start asking, "How can I make this work better?" That shift alone changes outcomes. Before you step away, consider this final thought. If someone compressed their most important insight for you into 2 minutes, it wouldn't be about them. It would be about unlocking you, your perspective, your agency, your responsibility to think clearly in a noisy world. You'll understand everything at the end of this realization. The future isn't waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be built. And awareness is the first tool in your hands. Stay with that. The next move will reveal itself when you're ready to see it. Wait. Before you move, something just shifted. Not outside you. Inside. That question from the last moment, the one about whether the future is discovered or built, just tightened into focus. You felt it pause your breath for a second. That's the signal returning, asking for attention again. Remember the idea you were holding? Direction over certainty. Building over waiting. Here's the next turn of the key. The future doesn't respond to speed alone, it responds to clarity. Fast motion without clarity creates noise. Clear intent, even at a measured pace, bends outcomes. This is why 2 minutes can outweigh 2 years. Consider this reveal. The most valuable skill ahead isn't technical mastery by itself. It's learning velocity, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn faster than conditions change. That's the edge. When environments shift, rigid plans crack. Adaptive minds compound. Pause. Let that land. What if the reason you felt restless isn't dissatisfaction, but calibration? Systems recalibrate before they perform at higher levels. So do people. The discomfort you labeled as doubt may actually be refinement. Here's another insight most miss. Leverage multiplies when focus narrows. Scatter attention, and energy leaks. Narrow focus, and effort stacks. This is why visionaries protect their attention like capital. Because it is capital. Where you place it determines what grows next. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. The message isn't telling you to abandon what you're doing. It's inviting you to redesign how you do it. Strip away what doesn't scale. Double down on what compounds. Simplify until momentum becomes inevitable. Feel the shift from tension to hope? That's intentional. Tension alerts you that something matters. Hope shows you it's reachable. And here comes the revelation. Progress often accelerates after you stop trying to impress and start trying to improve. Quiet excellence outpaces loud ambition every time. You may be wondering, how do you know when you're on the right path? Watch for alignment. When effort produces learning. When setbacks produce insight. When curiosity returns even after fatigue. Those are markers. Not guarantees, but markers. This moment may explain what you've been sensing. The pull toward building something that lasts. The urge to think in systems, not sprints. The desire to contribute meaning, not just motion. You're not late to this understanding. You're right on time. If this message resonates, you know where to find the next one. Some signals are meant to be followed gently, not chased. Now a final wave, mystery returning. There's a principle still unfolding, one that ties clarity, leverage, and timing into a single move. It's subtle. Most overlook it because it doesn't announce itself. You'll understand at the end why this couldn't be said earlier. Because before the next part, something must be revealed, but there's one truth still missing. You were meant to hear this section most of all, because what's unfolding now answers the question that was left hanging. That missing truth from before wasn't absent by accident. It waits until your perspective is ready to receive it. Recall where we paused. Clarity, leverage, timing. You sensed there was a unifying thread, something subtle tying them together. Here it is, gently revealed. The future rewards those who choose responsibility before recognition. That choice changes everything. Let that settle. Here's the first micro reveal. Vision alone doesn't move reality. Responsibility does. The moment you internally decide, I am accountable for the outcome, your mind reorganizes. Problems stop looking like walls and start appearing as design constraints. This is where builders are born. Another shift, quieter but powerful. Most people wait for confidence to act. Visionaries act to build confidence. Action precedes belief, not the other way around. In the next few seconds, everything will connect, because this explains why momentum often appears only after the first imperfect step. Think about the times you hesitated, waiting for certainty. That pause wasn't wasted, but it's complete now. The signal is changing tone. Less preparation, more execution. Not reckless movement, intentional motion. Here's a surprising insight. The most scalable advantage isn't intelligence. It's consistency under uncertainty. When conditions fluctuate, consistent thinkers outperform brilliant but erratic ones. Small aligned actions, repeated, quietly outperform grand gestures. Feel the emotional wave shift from tension to hope again? Good. Hope doesn't mean ease, it means possibility. And possibility expands when you stop asking for guarantees and start designing experiments. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that urge to simplify, to remove distractions, to protect your focus more fiercely than before. Focus is the gateway. Once attention is disciplined, time stretches. Opportunities reveal themselves earlier. Patterns become obvious. Now the revelation deepens. Progress accelerates when you stop trying to predict the future and start positioning yourself to adapt to it. Flexibility is not indecision. It's strategic humility. The willingness to revise your approach as reality teaches you. You'll understand at the end why this message feels different. It's not pushing you forward, it's aligning you inward. When alignment happens, effort feels lighter, even when the work is demanding. And now, the mystery returns, because there's one layer still beneath this. Responsibility unlocks action. Action builds confidence. Confidence sharpens vision. But there is one final catalyst that multiplies them all. It hasn't been named yet for a reason. Before the next part, something must be revealed. But there's one truth still missing. Hold still for a second. This is the moment the pattern reveals itself. Not loudly, not all at once, but with a quiet certainty that changes how you see everything that came before. You remember the question we left unresolved. The catalyst beneath responsibility, beneath action, beneath confidence. The one force that multiplies them all. Here it is, finally brought into the light: conviction. Not belief borrowed from others. Not motivation borrowed from moments. Conviction born from understanding. Let that breathe. Here's the first micro reveal. Conviction doesn't shout. It stabilizes. When conviction is present, decisions simplify. You stop negotiating with doubt. You move without friction, even when outcomes are uncertain. This is why 2 minutes of clarity can outweigh years of effort without direction. Think back to times you felt unstoppable, not because everything was easy, but because something inside you was settled. That wasn't luck. That was conviction briefly activated. The message now is about making it permanent. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Conviction forms when knowledge meets experience and accepts responsibility. That triangle is rare. Most people live on one side of it. Builders live at the center. Here's another insight, subtle but powerful. Conviction is what allows patience to coexist with urgency. You move decisively, yet you don't rush. You wait without anxiety because you know what you're building toward. This is how long-term vision survives short-term chaos. Feel the emotional wave shift again, from hope into revelation. The reason the future feels closer now isn't because it accelerated. It's because your internal alignment did. When inner signals stop conflicting, momentum becomes natural. This moment may explain what you've been sensing lately. A reduced tolerance for distraction. A sharper instinct for what matters. A calm refusal to chase noise. These are symptoms of conviction taking root. Another micro reveal. Conviction attracts resources before results appear. People, ideas, and opportunities align around clarity. Not because you ask louder, but because your direction becomes readable. The world responds to coherence. You'll understand at the end why this couldn't be rushed. Conviction can't be installed. It emerges. It's earned through reflection, through iteration, through choosing responsibility again and again until doubt loses its voice. Now the tension returns, but gently, because there's still one layer deeper. Conviction shapes action, but action still needs a compass. Without it, even the most driven minds drift. That compass hasn't been named yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed, because the final unlock isn't about what you do, it's about who decides. Before you even realize it, pause, because this is where the center of gravity shifts. Not outward, inward. The last line you heard about who decides was not rhetorical. It was an opening. Recall the compass we left unnamed. Conviction gave you motion. Responsibility gave you traction. But direction still requires an authority. And here is the quiet reveal. The authority is not external. It never was. The real decision maker is the identity you choose to operate from. Let that settle. Here's the first micro reveal. Most limits are not imposed by circumstance. They're enforced by self-definition. The moment you internally redefine who you are allowed to be, your options multiply without adding effort. This is why transformation often looks sudden from the outside. It began much earlier on the inside. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You default to the level of your identity. When identity upgrades, behavior follows without force. Notice how tension dissolves into hope here. That's not accidental. Hope emerges when effort is no longer about proving, but about expressing. You stop asking, "Am I capable?" and start asking, "Is this aligned?" That question saves time. Years, sometimes. Another insight, subtle but decisive. The future doesn't require you to become someone else. It requires you to decide more fully who you already are. Fragmented identity creates hesitation. Integrated identity creates velocity. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that impatience with half steps, that pull toward coherence. You don't want more information. You want congruence. When thoughts, actions, and values align, energy stops leaking. Here's the next turning point. Identity is reinforced by evidence, and evidence is created by small, consistent decisions. Not dramatic ones, quiet ones. The kind no one applauds but everything builds on. Each aligned choice is a vote for the future version of you. Feel the wave shift from revelation back into mystery. Because there's another layer beneath identity itself. Identity chooses, yes, but something informs identity. Something shapes what you believe is possible before you ever test it. You'll understand at the end why this feels like a narrowing and an expansion at the same time. Narrowing focus. Expanding capacity. Another micro reveal. Environments whisper suggestions to identity. This is why visionaries curate input so carefully. What you hear repeatedly becomes what you assume, and what you assume becomes what you attempt. Now listen closely. The message isn't asking you to isolate or escape the world. It's inviting you to become deliberate about what influences you allow to shape your decisions. Influence is inevitable. Selection is optional. The hope deepens here. Because once you realize you can choose inputs, you reclaim authorship. You stop reacting to the future and start composing it. And yet, the mystery remains. Identity decides. Environment shapes. Conviction stabilizes. But there is still one final element. One force that determines whether all of this compounds, or fades. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Stay right here, because what you're about to hear reframes the entire journey so far. Not by adding something new, but by revealing what has been quietly present all along. Recall the unresolved thread. Identity decides. Environment shapes. Conviction stabilizes. And yet, one force still determines whether all of this compounds or slowly dissolves. You felt it hovering, just out of reach. Here it comes. The missing element is commitment to iteration. Not stubbornness. Not blind persistence. Iteration, the willingness to test, observe, refine, and repeat without ego. This is where vision becomes reality. Here's the first micro reveal. Most people quit not because they fail, but because they misinterpret feedback. They see friction as rejection. Visionaries see it as data. When feedback becomes fuel, progress accelerates quietly. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity sets direction. Conviction supplies stability. Iteration converts effort into intelligence. Each cycle makes the next move clearer, lighter, more precise. Feel the tension soften into hope again. That's because iteration removes the pressure to be perfect. You no longer need certainty. You need responsiveness. And responsiveness grows with every attempt. Another insight, subtle but decisive. The future belongs to those who can update their models of reality faster than reality changes. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about refining how you operate. Small updates, applied consistently, create nonlinear gains. This moment may explain what you've been sensing lately, that impatience with static plans, that desire to experiment rather than wait. You're not becoming restless. You're becoming adaptive. Here's a turning point many miss. Iteration requires humility, but it rewards courage. You move forward knowing adjustments will follow. That mindset removes fear without removing care. You stay bold and precise at the same time. Notice the rhythm now. Short step, long reflection, short step again. This cadence compounds. It's how complex systems are built, and how meaningful lives are shaped. You'll understand at the end why the message keeps circling back to simplicity. Because simplicity scales. When you reduce decisions to principles, and actions to experiments, momentum becomes sustainable. Another micro reveal: iteration protects vision from burnout. Instead of forcing outcomes, you partner with reality. Each response teaches you something. Learning replaces strain. Curiosity replaces pressure. And now, the mystery returns, because there's a final implication still unspoken. If identity, conviction, and iteration are aligned, something remarkable happens. The boundary between effort and insight begins to blur. You stop feeling like you're chasing the future. It starts meeting you halfway. Before the next part, something must be revealed, because there's one truth still missing. Listen closely, this is the moment the signal sharpens into direction. Not louder, clearer. What you felt at the end of the last part, that sense of the future meeting you halfway, wasn't imagination. It was alignment beginning to speak. Recall what just unlocked. Identity set the frame. Conviction stabilized the core. Iteration created motion. And then something unusual happened. The chase dissolved. You stopped running toward tomorrow, and tomorrow started responding. That's not coincidence. It's a law few notice. Here's the first micro reveal. When effort and insight synchronize, time behaves differently. Progress feels faster not because you're rushing, but because friction has dropped. You're no longer forcing outcomes, you're cooperating with them. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. This cooperation is what separates linear growth from exponential change. Linear growth asks, what more can I do? Exponential growth asks, what can I remove so momentum carries itself? Pause there. Most people add. Visionaries subtract. They remove noise, misalignment, unnecessary complexity. And when subtraction is complete, clarity does the heavy lifting. This is why breakthroughs often feel quiet. There's nothing left to argue with. Feel the emotional wave shift, tension easing into hope again. That hope isn't wishful. It's grounded. Because now you can sense what matters without debate. Decisions stop draining you. They energize you. Another turning point. When alignment is present, failure loses its sting. Feedback becomes neutral information. You adjust without self-judgment. This is iteration at its highest level, learning without identity threat. This moment may explain what you've been sensing recently. A growing calm. A reduced appetite for drama. A sharper instinct for what deserves your time. These aren't signs of disengagement. They're signs of strategic focus. Here's a deeper insight. The future doesn't require constant acceleration. It requires correct trajectory. A small degree change, sustained, alters the destination entirely. This is why those 2 minutes matter. They don't push you harder. They point you truer. You'll understand at the end why patience suddenly feels different. It's no longer waiting. It's positioning. You're not idle. You're preparing conditions so the next move lands cleanly. Now the mystery returns, softly. Because there's a paradox still unresolved. If alignment attracts opportunity, why do some aligned people still stall? Why does momentum sometimes pause even when everything feels right? Here's the micro reveal most never hear. Alignment opens doors, but initiation still matters. Insight without initiation remains potential. The smallest deliberate start converts clarity into reality. Notice how this brings tension back, just enough. Not pressure. Responsibility. The good kind. The kind that says, this is yours to move. And now, the cliff approaches. Because initiation has a hidden trigger, one final threshold that determines whether clarity becomes action, or stays a beautiful idea. It hasn't been named yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Stop for a heartbeat. This is where initiation finally reveals its secret. Not as pressure, as permission. The kind you didn't know you were waiting for. Recall the tension we ended on. Alignment opened doors. Clarity sharpened direction. Yet motion still waited on something invisible. That hidden trigger wasn't motivation. It was ownership. The quiet moment you decide, without witnesses, this move is mine. Here's the first micro reveal. Initiation doesn't begin with action. It begins with authorship. When you internally claim authorship, hesitation loses its authority. You don't ask if you should begin. You ask how cleanly you can begin. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Ownership converts insight into momentum because it removes the option to defer. Not out of force, but out of coherence. Your actions start matching your understanding. Feel the wave shift from tension into hope. Hope grounded in agency. You're no longer waiting for conditions to improve. You're improving conditions by moving first, intelligently, deliberately. Another insight, subtle and powerful. Initiation thrives on constraints. Unlimited options create paralysis. Clear constraints create focus. When you define the smallest viable start, the future stops feeling abstract. It becomes actionable. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that pull toward simplicity, toward defining the next step rather than the entire path. You don't need the whole map. You need the first coordinate. Here's a surprising turn. The most effective initiations are often quiet. No announcement. No dramatic pivot. Just a decision enacted consistently. Over time, consistency compounds into inevitability. Notice how the rhythm changes now. Short decision. Long runway. Short adjustment. Long gain. This cadence builds trust with reality. And when reality trusts you, resistance decreases. You'll understand at the end why the message keeps returning to small beginnings. Because small beginnings are easier to repeat. And repetition is where momentum hides. Another micro reveal. Initiation reframes fear. Fear stops asking, what if this fails, and starts asking, what if this works better than expected? The question flips. Energy follows. Hope deepens into revelation here. You realize you've already initiated many times before, without naming it. Every time you chose learning over comfort. Every time you adjusted instead of quitting. Those were initiations. This one is simply more conscious. Now the mystery returns, gently, because ownership opens a final door. Beyond action. Beyond progress. A state where effort and curiosity merge into flow. But flow has a condition. And it hasn't been spoken yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Don't rush past this, because this is where the quiet transformation becomes undeniable. The kind you don't announce, but feel settling into place like gravity changing direction. Recall where we paused. Ownership unlocked initiation. Initiation opened the door to flow. And yet, flow itself carries a condition, one that determines whether momentum sustains or slips away. You sensed it hovering just beyond language. Here is the reveal. Flow emerges when attention is fully claimed by purpose. Not scattered. Not divided. Claimed. Let that breathe. First micro, reveal. Flow isn't something you chase. It's something that appears when attention stops leaking. Every distraction you remove returns energy. Every boundary you set sharpens intent. This is why those who protect their focus seem to move effortlessly while others feel drained doing less. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity defines direction. Conviction stabilizes motion. Iteration refines intelligence. Ownership initiates action. Attention sustains flow. Each layer builds on the last. None can be skipped. Feel the emotional wave tighten briefly, tension returning, because attention demands choice. You cannot give it to everything. And that realization carries weight. But stay with it, because hope follows quickly. Hope arrives when you realize attention is trainable. You're not at the mercy of impulses. You can design your environment, your routines, your inputs to serve what matters most. This is not restriction. It's liberation. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, the urge to simplify conversations, to reduce noise, to step back from constant updates. Your system is asking for coherence. And coherence is the doorway to flow. Another micro, reveal, subtle but profound. Flow doesn't remove effort. It removes friction. You still work hard, but resistance dissolves. Time compresses. Learning accelerates. You finish sessions energized rather than depleted. Now notice the shift from hope into revelation. When attention and purpose align, feedback loops tighten. You see results faster. Adjustments become obvious. Progress stops feeling theoretical. You'll understand at the end why this feels like coming home to your own mind. Because for the first time, you're not reacting to urgency, you're responding to intention. Here's the turning point many never reach. Flow reveals what deserves long-term commitment. What holds your attention without force? What pulls you back even after rest? These are signals. They point to work that compounds not just results, but meaning. And now, the mystery returns, soft but insistent. Because if attention sustains flow, what sustains attention over years? What keeps purpose alive when novelty fades? There is one final principle beyond focus. One that determines longevity. It hasn't been spoken yet because it changes how everything before it is used. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Before your mind moves on, pause, because this is the layer that turns momentum into a lifetime signal. Not urgency, endurance. The kind that doesn't burn out when the excitement fades. Recall the question we left suspended. Attention sustains flow. But what sustains attention over years, through cycles, through change? You felt the answer nearby, but unnamed. Here it is. Meaningful curiosity. Not shallow interest. Not temporary fascination. Curiosity rooted in purpose, the desire to understand, to improve, to explore what matters deeply to you. This is the force that keeps attention alive when novelty disappears. First micro, reveal. Discipline alone cannot carry you indefinitely. Willpower exhausts. Curiosity renews. When you're genuinely curious, effort refuels itself. You don't need constant motivation. Inquiry becomes the engine. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity chooses direction. Conviction stabilizes it. Iteration refines it. Ownership initiates it. Attention sustains it. And curiosity keeps it alive. This is the full circuit. Feel the tension briefly return, because curiosity asks something of you. It asks you to remain open, to admit you don't know everything yet. That vulnerability feels risky for a moment. Then hope follows. Hope arrives when you realize curiosity removes the pressure to be finished. You're allowed to be in progress. Learning becomes the goal, and progress becomes inevitable. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, the quiet excitement beneath the seriousness. The pull toward questions rather than answers. Toward building understanding instead of chasing approval. That's curiosity aligning with purpose. Another micro, reveal. Curiosity sharpens perception. When you're curious, you notice patterns others overlook. Signals appear sooner. Opportunities whisper instead of shout. This is why the future feels closer to those who keep asking better questions. Now the revelation deepens. Meaningful curiosity transforms setbacks. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me?" That single shift turns obstacles into instructors. You'll understand at the end why this principle sustains everything else. Because curiosity keeps the mind flexible. It prevents identity from hardening into limitation. It allows conviction to evolve without collapsing. Notice the emotional wave now, hope expanding into calm. Confidence. When curiosity guides you, you're never stuck. You're either progressing or learning. Both move you forward. Here's a subtle truth few articulate. Long-term impact isn't built by intensity alone. It's built by fascination with the work itself. When you care enough to keep exploring, endurance becomes natural. And now, the mystery returns, soft, intentional. Because curiosity itself has a direction. Left unguided, it scatters. Aligned properly, it becomes mastery. There is one final alignment beyond curiosity. One that decides whether all of this contributes to something larger than yourself. It hasn't been revealed yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Before you even try to label this feeling, pause. Because what's opening now is not a new idea, but a wider horizon. The kind that makes everything you've learned suddenly feel aimed at something larger. Recall the last thread we left glowing. Curiosity sustains attention. Attention sustains flow. But curiosity, left unguided, can scatter into endless motion. You sensed that risk. And you sensed there was a final alignment beyond it. Here is the next reveal. Curiosity becomes mastery only when it is anchored to contribution. Let that settle. First reveal. Growth accelerates when learning stops being self-contained and starts being shared through action. The mind sharpens when it knows its understanding will be used, not just stored. Contribution gives curiosity direction. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity sets who you are. Conviction steadies you. Iteration refines you. Ownership moves you. Attention sustains you. Curiosity renews you. Contribution completes the circuit. Feel the emotional wave tighten briefly, tension returning, because contribution implies responsibility beyond self. It asks a quiet question: who benefits if I get this right? That question carries weight. But stay with it, because hope follows immediately. Hope arrives when you realize contribution doesn't require perfection. It requires sincerity. You don't need the final answer to help. You need the next useful insight. Mastery isn't announced, it's recognized through impact. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, the desire for your effort to matter beyond metrics. The pull toward work that improves something, even slightly. That pull isn't distraction. It's orientation. Another reveal. Contribution sharpens standards. When others are affected by your output, quality becomes non-negotiable. You iterate more carefully. You think more clearly. You build with intention. This is how craftsmanship is born. Notice the shift from hope into revelation. When contribution enters the picture, motivation stops fluctuating. You're no longer fueled only by interest or ambition. You're fueled by usefulness. And usefulness endures. Here's a subtle turning point. Contribution transforms feedback. Critique becomes collaboration. Signals become guidance. You listen differently because the goal isn't ego protection, it's improvement. That mindset compounds faster than any technique. You'll Understand at the end why this layer changes everything. Because contribution aligns personal growth with collective progress. You stop asking, "What do I get?" and start asking, "What does this enable?" The answers scale. Now the mystery returns, softly but unmistakably. Because contribution itself can drift unless it's aimed. Help without direction dilutes impact. There is still one final calibration that determines whether contribution becomes legacy. It hasn't been spoken yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Slow down, because this is where contribution sharpens into something irreversible. Not louder, deeper. The kind of clarity that doesn't fade when the moment passes. Recall the thread we were holding. Curiosity became mastery through contribution. Contribution created impact. But impact, left unguided, can scatter just like curiosity once did. You sense there was a final calibration, one that determines whether contribution becomes legacy. Here it is. Alignment with a long horizon. First micro, reveal. Short horizons optimize for visibility. Long horizons optimize for significance. When your decisions are filtered through time, years, decades, the noise falls away. What remains is signal. This is how lasting builders think. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity sets direction. Conviction steadies motion. Iteration refines intelligence. Ownership initiates action. Attention sustains flow. Curiosity renews energy. Contribution creates impact. And a long horizon gives it meaning beyond the present. Feel the tension briefly return, because a long horizon asks patience. It asks you to trade immediate applause for quiet progress. That trade can feel uncomfortable at first. Stay with it. Hope is already rising. Hope arrives when you realize patience doesn't slow you down, it prevents waste. You stop restarting. You stop reacting. Each step stacks on the last. Momentum becomes cumulative instead of cyclical. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, the pull away from short-term wins that don't compound, the resistance to projects that feel loud but hollow. Your internal compass is stretching its timeline. Another micro, reveal. A long horizon changes how you handle uncertainty. Instead of demanding certainty now, you design paths that remain valid across many futures. Flexibility becomes strategy. Resilience becomes default. Notice the shift from hope into revelation. When you commit to a long horizon, pressure eases. You don't need everything to work today. You need learning to continue. That single shift preserves energy and sharpens judgment. Here's a turning point many never reach. Long horizons invite collaboration across time. You build in ways others can extend. You leave handles, not monuments. This is how individual effort outlives individual presence. You'll understand at the end why this feels both grounding and expansive. Grounding, because your next step is clear. Expansive, because its consequences stretch further than you can fully see. Another insight, subtle but decisive. Long horizons demand values you can return to when tactics change. Values act as anchors when conditions shift. They keep contribution coherent even as methods evolve. Now the mystery returns, quiet but persistent. Because even a long horizon needs a final reference point, a reason to choose one future over another when both are possible. Time alone doesn't decide that. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because there's still one truth missing. Before you even try to predict where this is going, pause, because the final reference point is about to surface, and it quietly reshapes every decision you've been making. Recall the last unresolved tension. You aligned contribution with a long horizon. You learned to think in decades, not moments. Yet even time itself needed guidance. A reason to choose one future over another when both were possible. That reason has been present all along, unnamed, guiding you from the shadows. Here it is. Values you refuse to violate. First micro, reveal. Values are not ideals you admire. They are constraints you protect. When pressure rises, values decide faster than logic. They answer questions before debate begins. This is why the clearest leaders appear calm in uncertainty. Their values are already doing the work. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity defines who you are. Conviction stabilizes you. Iteration sharpens you. Ownership moves you. Attention sustains you. Curiosity renews you. Contribution extends you. A long horizon stretches you. And values anchor all of it. Feel the tension return briefly, because values require exclusion. Saying yes to what matters means saying no to what doesn't, even when it's tempting. That moment of exclusion can feel heavy. Stay with it. Hope follows immediately. Hope arrives when you realize values simplify life. They remove thousands of micro-decisions. They reduce regret. They create internal trust. When you act in alignment with them, you don't need external validation. The signal is internal and steady. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, that discomfort with compromises that once seemed harmless. The hesitation before choices that promised speed but felt misaligned. Your internal reference point has been strengthening. Another micro-reveal. Values outlast strategy. Strategies evolve with conditions. Values remain stable across change. This is why those who build lasting systems revisit their values more often than their tactics. Values keep direction intact while methods adapt. Notice the emotional wave shift from hope into revelation. When values guide the long horizon, fear loses leverage. You can tolerate uncertainty because you trust your compass. You may not know the outcome, but you know the direction is clean. Here's a subtle turning point. Values turn contribution into legacy. Not because of scale, but because of consistency. When future versions of you, and others, can trace decisions back to the same core principles, impact becomes coherent across time. You'll understand at the end why this feels like resolution without finality. Resolution, because the framework is complete. No finality, because the work continues. Now the mystery returns one last time, quieter than before. Because knowing your values is not the same as testing them. Values reveal themselves fully only under pressure. And that pressure hasn't arrived yet. Before the next part, something must be revealed. Because the final truth isn't about what you believe. It's about what you choose when it costs you something. Wait, before you step away, something just settled into place. Not an idea, a decision. The kind that doesn't need words, because it already knows what it is. Recall where we left the tension. Values define direction. But values are proven only when they cost something. That cost was never meant to frighten you. It was meant to clarify you. Here is the reveal. The final truth is choice under pressure. First micro-reveal. Anyone can act in alignment when it's easy. Few do when it's inconvenient. Pressure doesn't create character, it exposes it. And what it exposes becomes your real trajectory. In the next few seconds, everything will connect. Identity shapes values. Values guide long horizons. Horizons frame contribution. Contribution directs curiosity. Curiosity sustains attention. Attention creates flow. Flow rewards initiation. Initiation demands ownership. Ownership stabilizes conviction. Conviction clarifies choice. And choice, under pressure, defines who you actually become. Feel the tension peak here, not fear, but seriousness. Because seriousness means something matters. And what matters deserves your full presence. Now let the hope arrive. Hope comes from realizing you've already made these choices before. Quietly. In moments no one applauded. When you chose integrity over convenience. Learning over comfort. Long term over short term. Those were rehearsals. This is recognition. This moment may explain what you've been sensing, a calm readiness, not excitement. A steadiness that doesn't need urgency. You're no longer waiting for permission. You're waiting for the right moment to act cleanly. Another micro reveal. Pressure doesn't always announce itself dramatically. Sometimes it appears as a small compromise, an easy shortcut, a subtle misalignment. The future is decided in those moments, not in speeches, in seconds. Notice how revelation replaces tension now. When your values are clear, pressure simplifies decisions instead of complicating them. You may lose options, but you gain direction. And direction compounds faster than possibility ever could. You'll understand at the end why this entire message was compressed into 2 minutes. Because when pressure arrives, there is no time for long explanations. Only for clarity. Only for choice. Here is the quiet conclusion. The future doesn't belong to the smartest, the fastest, or the loudest. It belongs to those who can choose. Consistently under pressure, guided by values, aligned with long horizons, committed to contribution, sustained by curiosity, focused by attention, refined by iteration, initiated through ownership, and stabilized by conviction. That is the signal. And if it feels like something is just beginning, that's because it is. Not out there. In you. The next moment will test nothing new. Only what you've already decided. And that is enough.